40,000 years ago, the earth was locked in ice. Snow stretched endlessly across valleys and mountains, covering everything in silence. The wind howled like a predator, sharp and merciless, cutting through skin and bone. Nights lasted longer than days, and the cold was not just uncomfortable. It was deadly. Most creatures perished in this frozen darkness, but not all. Against all odds, small bands of humans, our ancestors, endured. No houses, no electricity, no warm blankets waiting for them, only caves carved by nature. Fire sparked from stone, and the fragile strength of community. Every night was a gamble. One mistake could mean death, and yet somehow they made it through, winter after winter, generation after generation. How did they do it? What secrets kept them alive when the world itself seemed determined to freeze them out of existence? Tonight, we step back into their world. We'll follow the glow of firelight into caves where families huddled together, wrapped in furs. We'll hear the crackle of flames, the howl of wolves outside, and the steady rhythm of survival. This is the story of how cavemen conquered the coldest nights of the Ice Age, and how their strength still burns within us today. Now, let us step inside the cave. The storm outside rages on. Snow falls in thick, endless sheets, carried by a wind that howls through the valley like a restless spirit. The night is black, and the cold is merciless. But here, in this shelter of stone, a small fire glows. The flames dance gently, their light flickering across rough cave walls. Shadows stretch and sway, painting stories upon the stone. The smell of smoke lingers in the air, mingling with the earthy scent of furs spread across the ground. You can almost hear it, the soft crackle of wood as it burns. Every spark is precious, every flame carefully fed with dry branches gathered earlier in the day. Without it, the darkness would swallow everything. Around the fire, a family rests. Children are wrapped tightly in animal hides, their breaths forming small clouds in the chill air. A mother leans close, whispering comfort, her hands smoothing the fur that covers her child. The hunters sit quietly, their eyes fixed on the flames, listening to the wind outside, but saying nothing. Their silence speaks of exhaustion, of patience, and of the fragile peace the fire has brought them. The cave entrance has been covered, stones stacked, hides stretched across the gaps to keep the icy air at bay. Still, the cold seeps in, curling across the floor, nipping at bare skin. And so, they huddle closer, shoulder to shoulder, breath mingling, warmth shared not only by fire but by each other. The endless night is long, and they know it. Time itself feels frozen. There are no clocks, no way to measure the hours, only the rise and fall of the fire, the growl of hunger in their stomachs, and the sound of the storm outside remind them that the night has not yet passed. But even in this darkness, there is comfort. The steady rhythm of breathing, the softness of fur beneath tired bodies, the fire's glow reflecting in watchful eyes. Together, they create a fragile island of safety against a world that waits just beyond the cave walls. Occasionally, a wolf's distant howl carries through the night, sharp and haunting. For a moment, the children stir, drawing closer to their mothers, but the hunters do not move. They know the wolves fear the fire and they trust in its light. The fire has always been their shield. An elder begins to speak softly, his voice low and steady, telling a story passed down through countless winters. The children's eyes grow heavy as they listen. Tales of great animals, of hunts that fed the tribe, of spirits that watch over them even now. In these stories, there is warmth that no flame can give, hope, courage, and the reminder that they are not alone. Slowly, the cave grows quieter. The fire continues to crackle, glowing embers fading and flaring as more wood is placed upon them. The storm outside may roar, but in here, life persists. The night does not defeat them. And as you imagine yourself among them, Lying close to the warmth of the fire, you begin to feel the peace they must have felt. The cold is far away, the darkness cannot reach you. All that remains is safety and the steady heartbeat of survival. This was the endless night, a night where the world outside threatened to freeze everything it touched, a night where silence and shadow ruled. And yet, inside the cave, humans endured. Together, patient, quiet, waiting for the faint light of morning to return. Through the long and merciless winters, one discovery stood between life and death. Fire, it was not always with them. There were times when the tribe had to wait, shivering in the cold, until lightning struck a tree and set it ablaze. They would guard those flames with their lives, carrying glowing embers wrapped carefully in bark or clay, keeping the fire alive for days, weeks, even months. Because once it went out, there was no guarantee it could be rekindled. Over generations, they learned the secret. Flint stones struck together, sharp sparks falling onto dried grass or bark, patient hands blowing gently, coaxing the ember to life. The first curl of smoke, the first flicker of flame, it was more than survival. It was a miracle. And so, fire became the heart of every winter night. The cave that was once dark and silent now glowed with warmth. Shadows danced on the walls, creating shapes of animals and spirits that seemed alive. Around this glow, families gathered, their faces softened by its light. The fire crackled and whispered, a language older than words, telling them they were safe. But fire was more than comfort. It was protection. The beasts of the night, wolves, cave lions, and hyenas, kept their distance, their eyes flashing in the darkness but never daring to cross the circle of light. The fire was a guardian, a shield against the dangers outside. It was also a teacher. Around its flames, knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Elders showed children how to keep embers alive, how to gather the driest branches even in snow, how to place logs carefully so the fire would not choke. Each lesson was sacred, for without it, survival would end. The warmth of the flames sank deep into tired bodies, thawing frozen fingers, loosening stiff muscles. Food was cooked over it, meat roasted slowly, broth simmering in stone pots, roots softened until they could be eaten. For the first time in human history, meals were more than raw sustenance. They became warm, nourishing, comforting. The fire also gave them time. No longer bound by the setting sun, they could sit together in the night. They told stories, sang softly, carved tools by the glow of the embers. It stretched their days and gave space for memory, imagination, and dreams. But perhaps most powerful of all, fire gave hope. On nights when the storm howled without pause, when the cold pressed against the walls of the cave and fear crept into every corner, the fire reminded them that they were not helpless. They had power. A fragile flame, yes, but one that pushed back the endless dark. Close your eyes for a moment and picture it. The flicker of orange light on stone. The gentle rhythm of crackling wood. The warmth pressing softly against your skin, even as the wind claws outside. You are safe here. You are not alone. To the caveman, fire was not just a tool. It was sacred. It was life itself. They treated it with reverence, feeding it carefully, guarding it through the night as though it were a living spirit. And in many ways it was, for without it, there was no survival, no tomorrow, no future. The gift of fire was the gift of life, and so, as the winters dragged on, as nights grew longer and colder, one truth remained. As long as the fire burned, so did they. The fire warmed their nights, but it was not enough. Beyond the reach of its glow, the cold was relentless. Every step outside the cave was a battle against the frozen air. The only way to survive was to carry warmth with them. And so, they turned to the gifts of the hunt. When an animal was brought down, it was not only its meat that fed the tribe. Its hide, thick and heavy, became a shield against winter. Carefully stripped and cleaned, the skin was stretched and dried in the cold air. Women scraped it smooth with stone tools, softening it with fat and smoke. Over time, it grew supple and strong, transformed into clothing that clung close to the body, trapping heat within. Fur was the most precious. Wolf pelts, mammoth hides, reindeer skins, all stitched together with bone needles and sinew threads. Each stitch was survival, each piece of fur another layer between life and death. They wrapped themselves in cloaks that reached the ground, hoods lined with thick fur to protect the ears, boots stuffed with moss and grass for insulation. To us, it might look primitive. But to them it was armor, and every warrior of the cold knew, without it, the ice would claim them. But clothing alone was not enough. The tribe needed places to retreat, shelters to stand between them and the storm. The caves were their first refuge, carved by nature's hand. Deep hollows in cliffs and mountains where stone walls shielded them from the wind. Some caves stretched into darkness, their ceilings heavy with stalactites, their walls marked with soot and smoke from countless fires. Families nested inside, layering furs on the ground, arranging stones to block drafts, sealing cracks with mud and clay. Yet caves were not always where they needed them. The hunt often carried the tribe far from home, into open plains or frozen forests where no natural shelter waited. There, they learned to build their own. They drove wooden stakes into the frozen ground, bending them into frames. Over these skeletons they stretched animal hides, mammoth skins being the strongest. The hides were stitched and tied, creating domes that held heat inside. At the center, a small fire burned, its smoke rising through a hole above. Imagine stepping inside one of these shelters after walking through a snowstorm. The air is warmer, filled with the scent of smoke and hide. Outside, the wind screams, but within, there is a stillness. Furs cover the floor, children huddle together, and the faint glow of fire paints every face in shades of amber. For nomadic tribes, these hide tents were lifelines. They could be carried, rebuilt, and moved as the herds wandered. Survival meant following the animals, and so their homes walked with them across the frozen world. But there were others, those who sought permanence. Near rivers and valleys, they stacked stones into low walls, filling gaps with clay. On top, they placed branches and bones, layering hides for insulation. These were the earliest beginnings of houses, standing firm against the winter wind. Shelter was not just about walls and roofs. It was about safety. It was the place where laughter echoed, where stories were told, where fear gave way to rest. Without shelter, there was no warmth, no recovery, no tomorrow. Close your eyes and picture it now. A cave glowing with firelight, smoke rising slowly toward the ceiling. Furs spread across the ground, soft and thick. The quiet breathing of children wrapped in hides, sleeping soundly despite the storm outside. The soft murmur of adults, voices low and steady, knowing that, for this night at least, they are safe. Clothing and shelter were not luxuries. They were the armor that stood between humankind and extinction. Every stitch, every stone, every hide stretched across a frame carried one message. We will endure, and endure they did. Through snow, through storms, through nights that seemed endless, the cavemen learned to wrap themselves in the strength of the animals they hunted and the walls they built. The world outside could rage as fiercely as it wished. Inside, wrapped in fur and stone, humanity had carved a small island of warmth in an ocean of cold. Their armor against the Ice Age was not forged of metal, but of hide and hearth. And it was enough. Warm clothing shielded their bodies. Shelters gave them refuge. Fire brought light and hope. But even with these gifts, there remained a hunger that could not be ignored. For in the Ice Age, food was the truest measure of survival. The land was not generous. The earth lay buried under snow, the rivers often sealed with ice. Berries, roots, and edible plants were scarce, hidden beneath frozen soil. A day without food meant weakness, and weakness in such a world meant death, and so they turned their eyes to the great beasts that walked the frozen plains. Mammoths, towering and shaggy, with tusks that curved like the moon. Woolly rhinoceroses, armored and fierce. Herds of reindeer, bison, and wild horses, moving like rivers across the land. These animals were not just prey. They were survival itself. From their meat came food. From their fat, warmth. From their hides, clothing and shelter. From their bones, weapons and tools. Each hunt was a gamble, but one successful kill could sustain a tribe for weeks. The hunt began long before the chase. Men studied the tracks pressed into the snow, following the trails of herds. Women gathered dried grasses and roots, sometimes setting snares for rabbits and small game. Children learned by watching, their eyes wide as they traced the prints of animals in the frost. A hunting party moved like shadows across the plain. They carried spears tipped with sharpened stone, their shafts hardened by fire. Some held atlatls, throwing sticks that gave their spears greater reach and force. Each step was cautious, each breath measured, for the beasts they hunted were far stronger than they. Close your eyes and picture it. The crunch of snow beneath fur-wrapped boots. The sharp icy air filling their lungs. The silence before the storm of movement. When the moment came, it was sudden and violent. Spears flew, shouts echoed, the ground trembled beneath stampeding hooves. Hunters risked everything, for one wrong step could mean being crushed beneath a mammoth's weight or gored by a rhino's horn. But courage was born of necessity. Hunger drove them forward. When the kill was made, it was not only victory, it was salvation. Fires blazed brighter that night as the tribe roasted fresh meat. The rich taste of fat and marrow warmed their bodies, filling them with strength. Children gnawed on roasted bones, elders whispered prayers of thanks, and the hunters sat weary but proud, knowing they had kept their people alive. Nothing was wasted. The hides were stripped for clothing, the bones carved into needles and blades, the sinew dried into strong cords. Even the stomach of a beast could become a pouch for storing food. To waste was to disrespect the life taken, and respect was the foundation of survival. But food was never guaranteed. There were seasons when herds moved far away, when hunts failed, when the land seemed empty. In those times, the tribe turned to smaller blessings. Nuts cracked open with stones, dried roots dug from beneath frozen ground, fish pulled from icy rivers with bone hooks. Women foraged carefully, remembering which plants healed and which poisoned. Sometimes in desperate times, they stored food beneath snow and ice, turning the frozen land into a natural larder. Strips of meat were dried over smoky fires, becoming tough but lasting for months. Fat was sealed in skins, berries preserved in frozen clay pots. These stores were lifelines during the harshest winters, when fresh hunts were impossible. And still, hunger never fully disappeared. It was a constant shadow, a reminder that life was fragile. Yet hunger did something else too. It bound them together. Every hunt was a shared effort. Every meal was a circle of community, where food passed from hand to hand, where the weakest ate first and the strongest made sure none were left behind. In giving and receiving, they became more than survivors. They became a people. The hunt was more than survival. It was ritual. Around the fire, stories were told of brave hunters, of spirits that guided spears, of animals that gave their lives so humans might endure. The hunt was a test, a danger, a necessity, but also a sacred dance between man and beast. And so, with every frozen dawn, the tribe rose again. They followed the herds, sharpened their spears, and placed their faith in courage, skill, and the fire burning inside them. For in the Ice Age, hunger was the fiercest predator of all. and only those who learned to hunt it could survive. In the frozen silence of the Ice Age, no one survived alone. A single man with his spear could not face a mammoth. A lone mother could not guard her children against wolves while also gathering food. An elder, slowed by age, could not walk across the endless snow without help. Alone they were fragile, together they were powerful. Community was their true weapon. Every task in the tribe was shared. The strong hunters ventured into the plains, spears in hand. The gatherers searched for roots, nuts, and berries, teaching the young which plants healed and which harmed. The elders, though their bodies had grown weak, carried something greater, the knowledge of countless winters. They told the tribe when the herds would pass, where safe water could be found, how to read the sky and the land. Children, too, had their place. They fetched firewood, carried water in animal skins, learned to sharpen stone tools by watching their parents' careful hands. They grew in the circle of the community, every lesson preparing them for the day when they would protect the tribe themselves. Close your eyes and imagine it. A small group gathered in the glow of firelight. The hunters' weary faces bright with triumph after a successful kill, mothers dividing the meat, ensuring each child's bowl is filled, elders speaking softly, their voices a thread tying past to present, children leaning close, their eyes wide with wonder. This was survival, not of the strongest, but of the united. Even in danger, they stood together. When wolves circled the camp, men formed a line with spears ready, while women guarded the fire and children hid behind stone walls. When sickness came, the tribe cared for the ill, feeding them broth, keeping them warm with extra furs, whispering songs to ease their suffering. One person's struggle was shared by all. Cooperation extended beyond survival. Around the fire, they told stories, tales of great hunts, of animals larger than life, of spirits that watched over them. These stories were not just entertainment, they were memory, teaching, and unity. They reminded each person that they were part of something greater than themselves. There were rituals, too. Before a hunt, some tribes painted symbols on stone walls, praying for success. Others sang to the fire, offering fat or bone as gifts to the spirits of the hunt. These shared beliefs bound the tribe together, giving them courage when fear threatened to divide. But community was not without conflict. Hunger, fear, and exhaustion tested even the closest bonds. Arguments sparked over food. Jealousy stirred over recognition. Tempers flared in the tight confines of winter shelters. Yet even then, they learned to mend what was broken, for division meant weakness, and weakness meant death. Over time, they built customs to keep peace. The best cuts of meat often went to children and elders. Decisions were made together, guided by those with wisdom. Sharing was not kindness, it was law. Without it, the tribe would collapse. And so, cooperation became instinct. Like the fire that warmed them, it was fed every day with trust, patience, and sacrifice. Think for a moment. What was the greatest invention of the Ice Age? Was it the spear? The hide tent? The control of fire? Perhaps. But perhaps the truest invention was the community itself. The discovery that survival was not a solitary act, but a shared one. Because when hands worked together, when voices lifted each other, when hearts beat as one, they were stronger than the cold, stronger than hunger, stronger even than fear. Picture it once more. Snow falling softly outside the cave. Inside, the glow of fire. Men and women working side by side, carving tools, sewing hides. Children laughing quietly as they chase one another in the flickering shadows. Elders smiling, their wrinkled hands resting on fur, knowing the tribe will live another night. That was the strength of many. That was the reason they endured. In the end, it was not just fire, clothing, or weapons that carried them through the frozen centuries. It was each other. The Ice Age tested humanity with its fiercest trials, and humanity answered, not as individuals scattered against the storm, but as communities bound together in courage and care. That is how they survived. The Ice Age was not only a trial of the body, it was also a trial of the spirit. The nights were long, stretching endlessly into darkness. Outside, the wind screamed through valleys like a living thing. Death was always close, lurking in sickness, in hunger, in the jaws of beasts. Survival was not only about food, fire, or shelter, it was also about holding on to hope. And so, our ancestors turned to belief. They looked to the fire, its flames leaping and bending, and saw spirits dancing. They listened to the growl of the storm and heard voices of ancient powers. The earth was alive to them. Every stone, every river, every beast carrying a spirit of its own. When a hunt succeeded, they gave thanks. Fat or bone tossed into the flames, a gift for the unseen forces that had granted them strength. When a hunt failed, they sought forgiveness, painting symbols on stone walls, asking the spirits for mercy. Close your eyes and imagine a cave deep in the mountains. Torches flicker, smoke curls upward. On the walls, hands press pigment made of crushed charcoal and ochre. Red horses, black bison, mammoths drawn with sweeping lines. Each figure a prayer, each stroke a connection to something greater. These were not mere decorations. They were memories, guides, and rituals. A painted mammoth was more than art. It was the spirit of the hunt captured in stone, a way of keeping its power close. Some caves hold handprints pressed against stone, as if the artists were saying, "We were here. We lived, we endured." Thousands of years later, those hands still reach out, whispering across time. Belief gave them courage when fear threatened to consume them. Imagine sitting in a cave, the wind roaring outside, the fire low, shadows flickering across the walls. A child asks, "Will the cold take us? Will the beast find us?" The elder leans close and tells a story, a tale of the great mammoth spirit who guards the tribe, or of the sun who will always return, no matter how long the winter night. These stories were medicine. They wrapped fear in meaning, turning despair into hope. Rituals marked the rhythm of their lives. Before hunts, men painted their faces with ash, whispering words of strength. After death, they buried their dead with care, placing tools, beads, or flowers by their side, as if sending them on a journey. They believed death was not the end, but a passage, and in that belief, they found comfort. The tribe's unity was strengthened by these shared acts. Around the fire, they sang low, steady chants, voices blending until they became one. The songs echoed against stone, filling the cave with power greater than any one person. In those moments, they were not just survivors. They were a people bound by spirit. Belief also taught them resilience, to see meaning in the hunt, in the fire, in the turning of seasons, to trust that even the longest winter would pass, that the sun would rise again, that their children would live to see another spring. For us today, it is easy to see their world as harsh and bleak. But for them, it was filled with life, wonder, and spirit. The night sky glittered with countless stars, each one perhaps a fire lit by their ancestors. The aurora danced in the frozen heavens, ribbons of green and red that surely seemed like messages from gods. The world was not empty, it was alive, and they were part of it. Close your eyes and picture it, a circle of people in fur and hide, faces glowing orange in the firelight. The walls behind them painted with beasts that seemed to move in the shadows. A voice rises in song, deep and steady, others joining, their harmony filling the cave. Children curl against their mothers, listening, their fears fading with each note. For a moment, the storm outside does not matter. Inside, there is hope. Belief and spirit did not shield them from the cold, did not place food in their bowls. But it gave them something just as vital, the will to keep fighting. For survival is not only the body's endurance, it is also the heart's refusal to give in. And in that refusal, in the songs, in the paintings, in the rituals whispered to fire and stone, humanity found its strength. The Ice Age may have been an age of frost and shadow, but in the hearts of those who lived it, there burned a light that could not be extinguished, a light of hope, a light of spirit, and that light still burns in us today. The Ice Age ended thousands of years ago. The great glaciers retreated, the mammoths disappeared, and the earth grew warmer. Yet, in many ways, the people of that frozen age never truly vanished. They live on, in us. Every flame we light, every shelter we build, every community we form, carries echoes of their struggle. The story of our ancestors is not just buried in caves and bones. It is written in our very blood. Think back to the freezing nights they endured. The fire that kept them warm became the symbol of our progress. Today, in every light bulb, every hearth, every spark of invention, the hides they stitched became the beginning of clothing, an art that would one day turn to fabric, color, and design. The shelters they built grew into villages, towns, cities, and civilizations. The hunt that once filled their bellies taught us cooperation, strategy, and patience, the same skills that fuel our work, our science, our survival today. But perhaps their greatest gift was not fire, clothing, or tools. It was the spirit of endurance, the quiet, unbreakable strength to face impossible odds and whisper, "We will survive." Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine those distant ancestors, huddled in a cave, firelight flickering across painted walls. They do not know you exist. They cannot dream of airplanes, skyscrapers, or satellites. And yet, everything you are, your body, your voice, your heartbeat, comes from them. Their choices became your inheritance. Their courage, your foundation. We often think of them as primitive, but in truth, they were pioneers. They mastered an unforgiving world with nothing but stone, fire, and each other. They transformed fear into ritual, hunger into cooperation, darkness into light. And in doing so, they shaped the path for all who came after. Even their art, the red horses, black bison, handprints pressed into stone, still speaks to us across time. It tells us that they too longed to be remembered, that they too wanted to say, "We were here. We lived, we mattered, and we hear them. We carry them." Every story we tell, every song we sing by firelight, every hand we hold against the cold continues their legacy. The Ice Age tested humanity like no other time. Yet from its shadows emerged the first sparks of culture, imagination, and resilience. Without those early victories, there would be no us. So when you look into a fire tonight, or pull a blanket close against the chill, pause for a moment. Listen closely. You may still hear the crackle of ancient flames, the murmur of voices long gone, the steady heartbeat of survival echoing through the ages. For the cavemen are not just figures of the past. They are part of you, part of all of us. Their legacy is written not only on the walls of caves, but in the endurance of humanity itself. And it is because of them that we are here. The Ice Age may have ended long ago, but its echoes still live in the warmth of every fire, the strength of every home, and the resilience within us all. As you drift into the quiet of night, remember, our story began not in comfort, but in struggle. Not in light, but in darkness, and yet humanity endured. Perhaps in some way we carry that same flame forward even now. Thank you for walking with me through the frozen shadows of our past. Until we meet again in another story of time, sleep well, and let the fire of our ancestors guide your dreams tonight.